importance of that task and the risks associated with its delivery. That's really obvious, but you'll be surprised at how many people, when you're looking at risk assessments and method statements and the capability and competency of the individual that they want to do a task, don't properly apply that proportionality. So if you've got a guy, for example, switching high voltage, and you've got a guy painting a wall on a stepladder, the amount of effort and competence that you should be thinking about for those two instances, hopefully it's really obvious. You spend lots and lots of time and looking at the development and education and competence of the guy switching HV, because the risks associated to him and the infrastructure and everything else downstream of that, relative to a guy standing on a small stepladder painting a wall, they're both important, but the level of competence is different. Where does the level of competence get determined? Again, organisationally, a director or your board should really define what the level of competence is for each of the roles, predominant roles that sit in with your organisational structure. And again, generally speaking, it's a poor policy, or it doesn't exist. The last point there, the onus of proof of competence always falls upon the employing organisation. The organisation is vicariously liable for all of its staff. So if you can't prove that your individual is competent, then not only is the individual for the high jump, so is the organisation, because they haven't fulfilled their obligation and their duty of care to their staff. Hugely important. So, moving on then, how do we manage it? So, an effective competency assessment process must be repeatable so that the comparison of results can be made. It needs to be measurable. So the measures that are documented, known and understood. It must be based on best practice, traceable to standards if possible and to frameworks. Transferable between frameworks, as an assessment process limited to a single framework will have limited application. And it must be tailorable. As I mentioned, FM and building services, it's diverse. So if it can be modified for different organisations or for different sectors within an organisation, all the better. So the journey. So the Engineering Council, which most of us will be members of through our affiliation with CIBSE, looks at both professional and technical competence. It maintains internationally recognised standards of professional and technical competence, and in order to join, you have to reach a requisite level in your chosen area of expertise, and of course that takes effort, dedication and commitment. So the approach to appointing task-specific competence must really take a similar route, and that will be a combination of things like formal and informal training. That could be qualifications and certification where that's appropriate. Training must generally be up to date with current knowledge, current practices. It takes into account experience gained and of course time served. And then a formal appointment if that's appropriate, but certainly with a defined scope and with those limitations very, very clearly articulated. A certification body can certify organisations or individuals, and an example of that might be something like GasSafe, for example. They have a very good scheme, but if you look at a number of others, they're quite thin on the ground. So we just need to be a little bit careful about what those certifications mean. They're generally aimed at company corporate rather than the individual that comes to your site to do the task that you employ him for. So yeah, important message there. Certification of organisational competence doesn't indicate any individual within the organisation is competent. It's inferred, but they may not be. And of course we all have a duty under the Health and Safety at Work Act, I hope you know, that before you set anybody to work on your site, that culpability of assessment sits with you as the employing manager. competence management is collectively the arrangements to control, in a logical and integrated manner, a cycle of activities within the organisation that will assure and develop competence performance. There's obviously a link here to, it's not here, but I'll come back to it later, to our friend Deming in terms of Plan, Do, Check, Act. He seems to get everywhere, but he's right. So we'll come back to that later. The aim, of course, to managing competence is to ensure that individuals are clear about their performance expectations, they've received appropriate training and development, and that they maintain or develop their competence over time. This is about helping yourself as people as well as the organisation helping you. If you don't ask because you feel that you don't have a necessary competence to enable you to do your job, then actually you're not competent, because this is all about the self-awareness piece. So if you're not self-aware, then arguably you're shifting towards the left of that continuum towards incompetence. The aim is to ensure then that the individuals are clear about that performance standard, as I say, and if it's not managed, we lose it. Competence can be lost, be under no illusion. So if it's not practiced, if it's not refreshed, then actually you're likely to find that in your role you will become less employable, and that puts you then at risk in terms of the continuance of your job and your role. So yeah, we know our business risks, and I employ competent people. I'd like to think that. Can I prove it? I've got some work to do, because since I've written this, I've looked internally, and I can't prove that I've got all my pieces of paper in place, and at the moment I feel a little bit exposed, and I'd like to think that I wouldn't be exposed because I'm acutely aware of it. So it is something that we need to look at as an industry. So I said I'd come back to competence management systems. So these offer a whole raft of benefits. So if used in a commercial business, first off, it's a strategic differentiator or a unique selling point. If, when you're in a tender scenario, you can demonstrate that you have a bespoke or a process rather that manages employee competence, you're probably already one up on your competition. And we come back to that confidence and capability thing again. If you give your customer the confidence that the organisation has the capability to deliver the job with competent people performing it, actually that's half the battle. So what does the CMS system look like? Well, it can be anything. So we come back to proportionality again. If you're a sole trader or you're a small business with maybe 10, 15 people, do you know what? An Excel spreadsheet would probably do it, because it's appropriate to the size of the business, relative obviously to the function that they're providing. If you're a massive corporate, then it may well be that you want something that's a little bit more IT savvy, that's maybe being developed and has got more whistles and bells on it. The IT solution can be simple or complex. It just needs to be proportional to what you're dealing with. It is a powerful tool, and we think, and what we promote in this guide, is that it should form a direct linkage and integrate with the HR system. Again, I don't think it's happening out there from our experience and what we looked at when we put this guide together. But if HR and competency management are integrated, it gives a much, much better platform to ensure that we're getting the best out of our people. I mentioned if you've got a good one, you can actually get confidence to your customers, and you can leverage that, as I alluded to, in bid scenarios and tendering environments. The other good thing is that you can link it into your ISO audits. We've all got 9001, 18001, etc. It's a prerequisite these days. But actually, if you can actually augment that then and say, oh, and in addition, within our quality framework, we operate a competency management system which is fully integrated with our HR function. Wow, how powerful is that? Again, not many companies do it, Don't know why, but as I say, I think this is the decline in terms of the HR function over time. So, have I missed anything there? So, yeah, the other thing there is that if you've got a good system, you potentially reduce incidents, accidents and human errors. Again, it's a risk mitigation strategy. So, again, just to refresh that, there's four main aspects of what we feel contributes to a competence management system. So there's, again, establishment. So this is identifying the work activities, the associated risk priorities and the relevant standards. Are they all satisfied? Tick. Does it suit your organisation? So is it an Excel spreadsheet or a big IT platform? Is it appropriate? Does it include job descriptions that match the profile of the role that you've employed the person to do? How many people annually review staff's job descriptions to check that actually they're still on point with what it is that you're asking the operative to do? Most of you probably employ on a job description and 20 years later he's doing a completely different job but he's still on the same job description. Probably not good enough. The criteria of the job should be proportional to the duties, and as I say, making sure that you've got the HR system integrated and embedded is really good, and that will then form part and parcel of organisational culture. The implementation stage, we've talked about looking at how we do that, selection, recruitment of new staff, matrix assessments, identifying gaps, risk mitigation techniques, all of which can sit within that system. The maintain phase, which is really looking at and monitoring performance, regular appraisals against task, regular reviews around exposure, training. Is that person that you've got as an AP on low voltage switching, has he actually done any switching in the last 12 months? The fact that he hasn't done any has diminished his competence because his familiarity on the systems has reduced. All of a sudden, you now got a guy that you think's competent working on an electrical system that is putting himself potentially at risk. So, monitoring and maintaining performance and competence is paramount. And verification, audit and review. Periodically checking, making sure that what you've got individuals doing meet the business need and that the competency is matched. So as I say, we want the CMS and the HR systems to be integrated. So these are just two extracts of just to sort of bring it to life a little bit with a picture rather than words of what we've used as examples within the guide. So you'll probably recognise the one on the left. That's from the COMAR regs, the Control of Major Accident and Hazard Regulations 2012. So again, there's 5 stages there, and these have been slightly adapted for the purpose of this guide, but it's principally based on COMAR. And the second one on the right there, that's a little bit older. That's from about 2002, and that's come out of the Health and Safety. Which one was that? Health and Safety Appendix 1 document, Human Antics, I think it was from memory. I've got it written down here. And that's really just a simple flow chart around how you identify and check that a person has gone through an appropriate loop to ensure competence. Both those examples, however, have a couple of things in common, and that is that they both incorporate a need for preparation, learning and improvement processes, and those are explained in detail in the document. Performance reviews. So that's the 5th phase of the cycle, review and audit, and that's majored on in the document a little bit. And it talks about the importance to review regularly because actually sometimes these things are influenced by business change rather than functional change in terms of task delivery. You can do this as part of an individual or part of a group or part of a corporate review process, so there are ways that you can do this, again, depending on your organisation. The structure and the structure charts and your deliverables need to be reviewed regularly so that you can ensure that you meet the contractual and the customer needs, and that well, we know that customers change their minds in terms of what they want really regularly. Not necessarily the contract, but their expectations. And we need to be able to adapt that and ensure that the roles and the profiles of the individuals that we have match those changes. Skills testing. Skills testing, really good one. How often is that performed on high-risk engineering systems? So HV, pressure systems, for example, both of which have a real potential for loss of life. Now they can be scenario-based. So some organisations do what they call integrated systems testing, some call them black start testing. Again, doesn't matter what you call them, but if your customer allows you to do that, then I would suggest that you embrace it, because if you don't have the opportunity to be exposed into that environment where the adrenaline's pumping and you're working in that real environment trying to restore power or pressure or chilled water or whatever it might be, then when you actually have to do it for real, that's quite scary. And your people need to be able to step up and respond to that challenge. KS21 has an appendix which has got a number of, and you can't see this very well here, but a number of template documents that can help you as well in terms of subcontractor and contractor assessment, and also some templates for some of the more higher risk confined space, electrical, mechanical, AP type of activities, which again you can use, you can brand, and they'll help you produce that auditable and demonstrable audit trail that will help you prove that your people are competent if you are required to do so. So have a look at those. Yeah, important message in bold. Document all records and record all documents. Onus of proof rests with you as the employer. If you haven't got your records and you have gaps, then you've got some explaining to do. I mentioned Deming, and there he is. So as I say, he creeps into everything, but again, it's important. So the structured framework that I mentioned, in terms of actually making sure you've got the right job and the right person specifications at the front end at the interview and recruitment process, that's your planning stage. Your doing bit is your development, your performance management, your control of contractors, your benchmarking of individuals through your CMS system, because actually that's really helpful. Your check piece, which is go watch, go review, workplace inspections, change management processes. Look at your data. Look at how many incidents you've had in a common area. Look at how many of them have been against a particular work trade. Review whether or not actually those competent people need further development to reduce those instances. And then the ACT piece, as I say, the near-miss accident data, disciplinaries, capability processes. So all of that, again, can be built into your competence management system and will bring the benefits. You will avoid costs and you will avoid business disruption if you take out, through that structured process, some of your unknowns and your risk areas. So, in summary, what I think we're asking you to look at within this document, and what it will help you to do, is to identify and prioritise your business risks and tasks, ensure you've got the right people, ensure you've got an integrated system, make sure that you understand the terminology you're using, and that you've got that backed up with a policy and a process. Guide you in terms of how often you should be undertaking performance reviews and monitoring. Make sure that specific roles or competence roles are authorised within the organisation. So this is, as I said earlier, this is about appointment and acceptance. And that's really for your high risk and your safety systems. And have that fully documented audit trail. I mentioned certification bodies before, so again, tap into people like GasSafe, they can help. And if you do all of that, then the risk of you or your organisation incurring fines is probably diminished quite significantly. And then there's a few little takeaway points there which I've covered, and so won't go through in any more detail. How am I doing for time? Am I? Well, that's the end of the formal presentation that I'm going to give, so I'm happy to take some questions. If you'll turn that thing off, I'll just show you 3 more slides.
Do you want to take questions first?
Yeah, fine.
Questions first, guys?
Go on then, Keith.
Steve, I understand exactly what you're trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think about the entry point into the industry that you want to deliver this document. In CIBSE, this is sort of compressed into the facilities management sector part of it. I just really wonder whether design engineers who spend time on CAD systems and looking at the front end of the process would really understand anything you've said.
Okay, good point. So this has been written, you're absolutely right, for or what's come out of the facilities management group within CIBSE. And it is really aimed at the wider FM piece, but looking at more of those competence roles in terms of technical. But I think what I would say is that the principles of what's being promoted in the document in terms of approach, in terms of structure, do apply to any roles. So this could even be applied to general management, for example, in terms of you've still got to have the right job description, you've still got to have the right limitations and boundaries and definitions within the role, and you've still got to ensure that that particular manager has a level of competence to fulfill the role that he's doing. Now, I do get, actually, the more you move up, and we'll come back to that in my latter slides, which are a little bit, hopefully, thought-provoking and will make you smile. But the further you do get up the tree, I agree, it becomes more difficult. And this is an easier subject area because it's more regulated, if that's the right phrase. But in terms of coming in at somebody who's junior in CAD or in administration and those types of roles, then whilst this isn't specifically aimed at them, I do think that there is stuff that you can take away in here in terms of the principle and the journey specifically around what those individuals need to apply for. So I'll give you an example. I've just employed, funnily enough, a CAD technician, and we brought him in and he very clearly knew his role, and on his first day I sat him down and I said, do you want to be a CAD technician all your life? And he sort of said, no, and he's only a young lad, he's probably about 25, and if he sees this he'll kill me. But he said, no, he said, this is a good starting point for me. He said, by doing CAD and understanding building layouts and understanding space and understanding how things link together, that will give me a good framework for what I want to do. And he's now doing BIFM level 3 to actually move up in the FM ladder, because his aspiration, having only been with me for 6 months, is he wants to move into facilities management. So he's completely changed his view by virtue of the fact that we've just opened a door for him. So I think he can apply, but I get your point, but I think it's the broad principles that we've got to take forward.
Steve, if I can just jump in there, and this sort of point was raised at one of Jeff Prudence's lectures, about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
And where, except that the bulk of the CIBSE membership are probably in the contracting and the design sectors.
Yes.
But given the increasing complexity and sophistication of services installations and how buildings work and the level of business risk that sits on those buildings working correctly, being installed, commissioned and looked after correctly within their design parameters for the next 20, 30 years, the goalposts are moving, and now your average facilities management technical manager needs to have an understanding of how the building was designed, how it was installed and commissioned, what the limitations of that design are, and align it with how the end user at any point in time of that building's life intends to use it, adapt it, knock the hell out of it and go, well, why can't I stick this open plan office, create cellular offices, why does the light and the aircon not work?
Mhm.
It's an office, isn't it? That is one of the salient points in that there's a migration from pure design and installation into whole life asset management. Not just facilities management, asset defence if you like.
Mhm.
Somebody has made a significant investment in a facility, in an asset, and that needs to, how that pays back the financial investment on the capital and returns the business return on capital deployed is going to flex over the life of that building. So you need to have the expertise that understands the starting point and the quantum gap between there, when it was designed and installed, and any point in time thereafter,
Mhm.
and recognise the limitations and opportunities that can be deployed. And that you need an understanding of both sides of the fence.
I'm not sure that was a question, but I agree with you.
But it wasn't a question, but it does define
No, you're absolutely right. Andy.
where we all are in
Yeah.
this grand scheme of things.
Yes. No, and that comes back, I think, then to the importance of record keeping, and that through that journey of that building, and let's face it, you know, those buildings are probably going to last more than the life of your typical person,
Yeah.
even if he stays in the same location.
But
So-
coming back to the theme of the presentation, competencies and skills,
Yeah.
you need the skills to understand how the building was put together. You need the competency to make sure it's maintained and operated safely.
Yes. And some of that comes then back to ensuring that the original O&M information that's produced at the time of that building handover, and the instruction manual, logbook, etc., which comes with it on how to use it,
Yep.
is actually handed over correctly. So that, I guess, if we're linking it back to that now comes back to the competence of the people that are accepting that package of information as the maintenance or the facilities
But
management
it also
organisation.
places great responsibility on the institutes, and CIBSE in particular, and sort of MI and IET, in making sure that the recognition and training courses that have the accreditation in the universities and the higher education reflect the needs of the future business, not the business today and tomorrow,
Mhm.
what it needs in 5-10 years time. Because this particular presentation of Jeff's
Yeah.
is entitled "Where is the next generation of technical managers coming from?" Because the great training grounds have gone.
Yeah.
I think to add something to that there, I mean, in our business we're designers, and for the record, all of that pretty much
Yeah.
aligns exactly with what we do as designers
Yeah.
in terms of measuring competence. You know, there's an increasing emphasis for us in shifting towards recruitment of apprentices,
Yeah.
and certainly with the degree apprenticeships coming in, taking those through to become engineers rather than getting graduates. So I think that's a much better prolonged structured training scheme that has to sort of do a lot to achieve greater levels of competency generally. So I think the industry is coming back round towards having really good structured training and development in place.
Yeah, because
Yes.
from a business point of view, you only build a building once. You
Yeah.
maintain it, refurbish it, refresh it, remodel it.
Mhm.
Your three-ring circus is a salient point, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So is mine.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Steve before he moves on to his next bit?
The only question I've got really is very good for the organisation itself, but obviously with FM nowadays, it's such a wide diverse area, you've mentioned it several times.
It is, yeah.
How do you go to subcontractors? Because the fact is now you've got to assess an area which you're not listening.
Okay, so that comes back to things like pre-qualification. So is it PAS 99? I think it is the accepted pre-qual these days for contractors. There is a template in the appendix as well, which will help guide those questions that we feel are essential to ask of subcontracting supply chains. But yeah, no, it's a fair point. You have to expend some level of diligence in terms of asking the right questions you've got. But I come back to the point that I made in there as well, and that is that